The alien station on Zenthra 9 was unlike anything Caleb Thorne had ever seen. It wasn't just the strange gravity or the harsh lighting. It was the way the walls seemed to hum with a strange energy, the way the air tasted almost metallic. The alien crew didn't speak much, mostly keeping to themselves. And Caleb. He was there to do his job, observe, report, and keep out of trouble. After all, this was part of Earth's diplomatic mission, and he had to make sure the humans came across as both friendly and capable. The problem, however, was Commander Rylana. She wasn't like the other aliens. Tall, sharp-featured, with skin that shimmered dark like polished obsidian. She moved with an elegance that both intimidated and intrigued Caleb. From the moment he'd met her, he felt her gaze on him. Every time he turned around, she was watching. Not just watching, but studying him. Caleb didn't know what to think at first. Was she just curious about humans? Or was there something more? Every time they crossed paths, she said little, but her eyes held an intensity that made him feel exposed. He could handle the physical discomfort of the station. But Rylana, she made him feel like he was a specimen under the microscope. He tried to ignore it. He had a job to do. The political meetings, the cultural exchanges, the endless data reports, everything had been going fine. Until tonight, he was working late in the cargo bay, fixing a malfunctioning engine. When the lights flickered and went out, he cursed under his breath, reaching for his flashlight. The hum of the station's power grid was replaced by a thick silence. Caleb froze for a moment, his instincts tingling. He could feel that someone was near. "Private Thorne," came a voice. Rylana's voice. He turned, startled. Standing in the doorway was the commander, her figure framed by the dim light. Her eyes glowed faintly, and her presence seemed to fill the entire room. "Commander," Caleb said, trying to keep his voice steady. "What are you doing here?" "I was checking the reports," she said simply, stepping into the room. Her eyes swept over him. "But it seems you've been busy with more than just your duties. You're not one to rest, are you, Private?" Caleb swallowed. "I don't mind staying late to get the job done." She took a step closer, her presence too intense to ignore. "You're not like the others. I've watched you. You're quiet, calculating, but there's something more beneath. Something untapped. I'm curious, Private. Why are you different from the other males?" Caleb's heart began to race. "What do you mean, different?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Rylana smiled slightly, a cold, calculating look in her eyes. "I've observed many males. They obey. They submit. They don't question. But you challenge, even in silence. I see it in the way you move, the way you watch." She took another step closer, her eyes never leaving his. "Tell me, Private Thorne, what does a human male desire when faced with a challenge?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I'm just here to complete my mission, nothing else." "Oh, but there is more, isn't there?" She took another step toward him. "I've read your species' history. I've studied your kind, your passion, your desire to prove yourselves. You don't just submit, you fight for what you want. Your females don't command you. You fight for them, don't you? You fight for the ones you desire, and you protect them with everything you have. But, most importantly, you take what you want." Caleb's breath hitched. "I don't know what you're talking about." Her smile deepened, and she closed the gap between them. Her hand moved to his uniform, and she touched the collar lightly, making him freeze. "I think you do, Caleb. I think you've always known what it means to take, to claim." She traced a finger along his chest, her touch surprisingly soft. "But in this world, what if the taking was not up to you?" Caleb's pulse quickened. "What are you saying?" She looked at him, her eyes glowing faintly. "I'm asking you to prove it. Show me that you are not like the others. Show me that humans are not weak, that your males do not bow to authority, but challenge it. Her fingers slowly moved down to the zipper of his uniform. Take me, Caleb, prove it. Show me that your kind does not submit. He was frozen for a moment, unable to think. Her words were a challenge, a test. His body reacted before his mind could. He knew what she was asking, and he knew that turning away would only confirm everything she believed about his kind. But could he really do it? Was he willing to give in to whatever this was between them? The tension in the air grew thick, and the silence between them seemed to stretch. Rylana didn't wait for him to answer. She unzipped his suit slowly, deliberately, watching his every reaction, waiting for him to make his choice. The moment she touched him, Caleb felt his entire world tilt. He wasn't sure what to do. His body was reacting in ways that felt out of his control. Rylana was still close, her breath soft but steady against his chest. The zipper of his suit was halfway undone, but he couldn't make himself move. Part of him wanted to step back. Another part, one that he'd buried for years, urged him to close the distance. Rylana noticed his hesitation. She looked up at him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light of the cargo bay. "You don't need to be afraid," she whispered. "You've been trained for danger, haven't you? But this is something different. You have to decide what kind of man you are, what you're willing to fight for." Caleb opened his mouth, but the words stuck in his throat. I'm not sure what you want from me, Commander," he finally managed to say. She tilted her head slightly, her hands still on his chest. "I want you to prove that you are not like the others. I want you to show me what drives your kind. I need to know that you are not just a male who obeys. Kay, I need to know that you will fight for what matters, for what you desire. Because that is what makes your species so fascinating to us. You don't just give in, you take. And that is what I want to see from you." Her words hung in the air between them. Caleb's mind was a mess. His training told him to push her away, to stand firm, to maintain control. But there was something about her presence, something in the way she spoke, that made him feel like his instincts were all that mattered now. The station around them felt distant. The crew, the mission, the purpose, they were all there for it, didn't seem to matter anymore. It was just Rylana and him, alone in this moment of confusion and temptation. "What if I don't want to prove it?" he asked, his voice low. She smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "Then you are just like the others. You'll retreat. You'll leave it to chance, and you'll be just another soldier obeying orders." She took a step back, her hands moving away from him. "But I don't think you want that. I don't think you're like them. You can hide behind your rules, or you can step forward and show me that you're something more, something different, something wild." The challenge was clear in her voice. Caleb's heart raced as he looked at her. He didn't know why, but he wanted to rise to the challenge. He wanted to show her that he wasn't just another soldier in the fleet. He wanted to prove that he had something that no one else had, a fire, a desire to claim what was his. He was no longer sure if this was about the mission, about his training, or if it was about something deeper. He stepped forward. This time, he didn't hesitate. Rylana's eyes widened as he closed the distance between them. His hand reached for the zipper of her uniform, and he tugged it down slowly, deliberately, mirroring the action she had taken earlier. She didn't resist. In fact, she leaned into him, her body pressing closer, her warmth radiating against his chest. Caleb's fingers brushed against her skin as he fully undid her uniform. His breath was quick and shallow. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest. Rylana's eyes were locked onto his, daring him to move forward. It wasn't just about the physical act anymore. It was about something more primal, about giving in to the desire, the instinct that burned deep within him. She was right. He wasn't like the other males she had known. He had something different inside him. He didn't just obey. He took. He fought. He wanted to show her that. To prove it, not just with words, but with actions. As his hands moved to her shoulders, she didn't flinch. She didn't pull away. She only closed her eyes and let him take control. For the first time since arriving on Zenthra 9, Caleb wasn't thinking about the mission or the consequences. He was thinking about the moment, the undeniable connection between them. The electricity that hummed in the air. "Take me," she whispered again, her voice soft but commanding. "Prove to me that you're different." Without thinking, Caleb leaned down and kissed her first, softly, then more urgently, as the tension between them finally broke. The air around them seemed to spark as their bodies pressed together. Caleb's mind spun. He had always prided himself on control, on logic. He didn't care about control. All he cared about was what was happening between them. Rylana responded with equal intensity, matching every movement, every touch. She was no longer just the commander. She was a challenge. She was something more. Something he had never expected to encounter. For a brief moment, nothing else existed. It was just them, two beings from different worlds, connected by something deeper than mere physicality. It was about proving something, about showing that there was more to life than just following orders. That desire could be a weapon as much as any gun or blade. And in that moment, Caleb was ready to wield it. Caleb woke up to the soft hum of the station, his body pressed against something warm. For a moment, everything felt like a dream. He blinked, his eyes adjusting to the dim light of the cargo bay. His mind raced back to the night before, the heat, the tension, the moment when he finally gave in to Rylana's challenge. He turned to see her lying next to him. Rylana's silver hair spread out across the floor like liquid light, her chest rising and falling with the rhythm of her breath. She looked so serene, so unlike the intense, commanding officer he had seen only hours before. The reality of the situation slowly began to sink in. He had crossed a line. He hadn't just followed orders. He hadn't just done his duty. He had let himself give in to something deeper, something primal, something unspoken between them. And now, as the silence of the station enveloped them, Caleb wondered what it all meant. He sat up, running a hand through his hair. The room still smelled of her, of the strange mix of human and alien scents. Rylana stirred, but didn't wake. Caleb glanced down at his suit, still half unzipped. It felt like everything had changed in an instant. "Caleb," Rylana's voice came softly, pulling him from his thoughts. She sat up beside him, her eyes still heavy with sleep, but there was something different in her gaze, something deeper than before. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Her lips curled into a faint, knowing smile. "Now we face the consequences. For both of us." She reached out and touched his hand gently. "You've proven what I needed to see, but what I didn't expect ... was how it would feel afterward." Caleb swallowed hard, his heart pounding. "What does that mean?" She looked at him, her expression serious now. "It means that I've seen what I needed to see. You're not like the others. I pushed you, yes? I made you prove your worth, but in doing so, I also revealed something I wasn't prepared for." Caleb could feel his pulse quicken. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. "What are you saying, Rylana?" As eyes softened. "You're more than just a soldier. You're more than just an experiment. And I ... She paused, her hand brushing against his chest. "I didn't expect to want more than just your strength, your instincts, but I do. And now, I'm not sure what that means for a soar for the mission." Caleb's breath caught in his throat. "I don't know what you want from me, Rylana. I didn't come here for this. I'm not just some tool for you to prove. Your theories on I'm human. I'm not supposed to be part of this alien war, this experiment. whatever this is. And now I feel like I've made a huge mistake. Rylana's gaze hardened for a moment, but it wasn't anger, it was understanding. You think I didn't know that? You think I don't see the doubt in your eyes? But you didn't have a choice last night, Caleb. Neither of us did. It was fate. It was our instincts. And now, she trailed off, looking down at the floor. Now we have to deal with what comes next. But I won't make you regret it. I won't force you into something you're not ready for. Caleb sat in silence for a long moment. He wanted to push her away. He wanted to tell her to go back to her duties, to leave him alone and let him focus on the mission. But another part of him, the part that was raw and exposed, didn't want her to leave. It wasn't just physical attraction anymore. It was something else, something deeper that he couldn't name. You've already changed everything, he said quietly. You've made me question who I am and what I'm supposed to do, what kind of man I want to be. And now I'm stuck with it. With you, her eyes softened even more. I didn't make you change, Caleb. I just showed you who you already were. And if you're willing to accept it, we can move forward together. But if you're not ready for that, then I'll understand. We can go back to being just soldiers, just strangers, if that's what you want. Caleb's heart was torn. He had never been good with emotions. He had always kept his distance, always focused on the mission, the job. But Rylana was different. She had forced him to face something raw inside of him, something he had kept hidden for years. I don't know if I'm ready, he admitted, his voice barely audible. But I can't go back to being the same man I was before. I don't know if I'll ever be that person again. Rylana nodded, her expression unreadable. Then we'll figure it out together. One step at a time. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their words hanging between them. The station outside seemed distant now, as if it belonged to another world, another life. Caleb didn't know what the future held, but in that moment he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't walk away from Rylana. He didn't want to. He turned to her, his voice low. What happens now? She smiled softly. Now, ... we find out what this means. For both of us? The days after that night on Zenthra 9 felt like a blur to Caleb. Rylana had been right. About one thing. They could never go back to being the same people. He wasn't sure what had changed within him, but something had. Every glance from her, every word seemed to carry more weight than before. It wasn't just attraction anymore. It was deeper, was raw. And it was terrifying. Everywhere they went, there was an unspoken tension between them. The crew on the station sensed it. The way Rylana's eyes followed Caleb. The way Caleb caught himself looking for her presence during meals, during meetings. They no longer kept their distance. Instead, they were drawn to each other in a way neither could explain. Caleb tried to push it down. He focused on his duties, keeping his mind on the mission. But when Rylana spoke, when she looked at him, with that intensity, he couldn't help himself. He wasn't prepared for the emotional complexity that came with their bond. It wasn't just about the physical connection. He couldn't get rid of the feeling that he was now a part of something he didn't fully understand. One evening, after a long day of diplomatic discussions and cultural exchanges with the alien races on the station, Caleb found himself alone with Rylana in the quiet of the observation deck. The stars stretched out before them, and the silence between them was almost suffocating. Rylana broke it first. Caleb, you've been distant. I feel it. You think this between us is just a passing moment, but it's not. It's real. And I need to know if you feel the same way I do. Or if you want to walk away before it gets too complicated. Caleb turned to her, feeling the weight of her gaze on him. He wanted to say something, to explain himself, but the words felt too heavy. He could see the vulnerability in her eyes. Same vulnerability he had seen in his own reflection when he looked at himself. I don't know what I'm feeling, he admitted, his voice quieter than he intended. "I've never been good with emotions, Rylana. This isn't what I expected. It's all so much more than I thought I was ready for. And now, I can't tell if I'm losing control or if I finally found it." She didn't look. Angry, she didn't pull away. She just stepped closer, her hand gently brushing against his. "You're not losing control, Caleb. You're discovering what it means to live fully. To feel, not just follow orders. And that's why I need you with me. Not because of what happened between us, but because we can create something together. Not just for the station, not just for our species, but for us. For what we've both been missing." Caleb's chest tightened. He looked out at the stars again, his mind racing. Everything had changed between them. But he wasn't sure what that meant for their future, for his future. He was just one soldier on a diplomatic mission. One small piece in a much larger puzzle. But Rylana had made him feel like something more. And he wasn't sure if that was a blessing or a curse. "I'm not ready to make promises," he said softly. "But I know I can't just walk away from this, from you. And I don't want to." She nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "We don't have to make promises, we just have to make choices. And face the consequences together." Before Caleb could respond, a voice crackled through the intercom. "Private Thorn, Commander Rylana. Please report to the Central Command. Room immediate mission briefing." The tension between them didn't dissolve. Instead, it lingered, unresolved. They stood there for a moment, silent, before Caleb reached for the door. Rylana followed without a word, but as they stepped into the hallway, the gravity of the situation became clearer. The mission was changing. What had started as a diplomatic mission was now at the cusp of something much more dangerous. The station wasn't just a place of peace, it was a powder keg, ready to explode. And Caleb and Rylana, they were caught in the middle by the time they arrived in the command room. The mood had shifted. The atmosphere was thick with uncertainty. The captain of the station, an alien named Draxel, stood at the center, flanked by a few other officers. The air was heavy with unspoken tension. Draxel's gaze briefly flicked to Caleb and Rylana before he turned to the screen, showing a map of nearby systems. "The T-Zorn are moving faster than expected," Draxel said, his voice steady but laced with concern. "We've detected a fleet heading toward us. They've been alerted to our presence here, and they're coming to test our resolve. We can't avoid confrontation any longer." Rylana turned to Caleb, her expression hardening. The weight of her duty seemed to settle on her shoulders. "The time for diplomacy is over," she said quietly. "Now we face the consequences of our choices, together." Caleb nodded, his stomach sinking. He knew what was coming. The T-Zorn had always been the most ruthless of their enemies, and now, with the knowledge of human-alien bonds, they were an even greater threat. And as he looked at Rylana, he realized that he wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for something far more personal. The briefing was over far too quickly. The T-Zorn fleet was approaching. Caleb could feel the tension in the air, thick and oppressive. It wasn't just the weight of the mission anymore. It was the weight of what he had shared with Rylana. The choices they had made and the consequences they would now face. Together, Draxel, the station captain, wasn't wasting time. His orders were clear. "We have less than 4 hours before the CRN arrive. Prepare for full combat readiness. Commander Rylana, Private Thorn. You're both assigned to lead the defense in Sector 3. We need you to hold them off long enough for the fleet to deploy our countermeasures." Caleb turned to Rylana, her face now a mask of resolve. This wasn't the woman he had seen in the quiet of the cargo bay or in the observation room. This was the commander, the leader. And she was giving him the same silent promise she had. In their private moments, this wasn't just about surviving the mission. This was about surviving together. "I don't need to tell you what's at stake," she said, her voice low and steady. "The Torn won't stop until they've broken us. They know about the bond we share. They won't just kill us, they'll try to rip apart what we've built, but we won't let them. Not now, not ever." Caleb felt the fire she spoke of flare inside him. He had never expected this, never thought he'd be caught in a war knot just for survival, but for something deeper, something more than a mission. But now he knew what he had to do. He gripped his weapon tighter. "Then, let's make sure they understand what happens when they push too far. I'm with you, Rylana, always." The words left his mouth before he even had a chance to think. But it felt right, felt like the truth. He wasn't just there to follow orders. He was there because he had a reason to fight. And that reason was standing next to him, ready to defend not just the station, but the bond they had formed. The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation and adrenaline. Caleb worked alongside Rylana, suiting up, checking equipment, coordinating with the rest of the crew. The station's once quiet corridors were now filled with the sounds of soldiers moving, engines powering up, and the hum of the defense systems coming online. The reality of war was setting in, and there was no going back. Caleb tried not to think about what was happening between him and Rylana. Not here, not now. But as they stood together, ready to face the incoming Tuzorn, he couldn't help but feel the weight of everything they had shared. It wasn't just physical anymore. It was a bond forged in fire, in vulnerability, in something that went beyond the need to prove anything. "We're ready," Rylana said, her voice tight but steady. "We hold the line until the fleet arrives. Don't let them take this station. Don't let them take us." Caleb nodded. "We won't." The comms crackled, a voice coming through the static. "All units, prepare for impact. The T-Zone are on approach. Repeat, the T-Zorn are on approach." Caleb felt his pulse quicken. This was it. The moment they had been waiting for. The station's defenses powered up, shields rising, weapons primed. Every soldier stood at attention, ready for battle. Then, the first wave of Taurus fighters appeared on the horizon. They were massive dark ships, sleek and deadly, firing missiles as they approached. Caleb gritted his teeth, locking eyes with Rylana. They didn't need to say anything. This was their fight, and they would fight it together. The first volley of missiles came crashing toward the station. Caleb's heart raced as he watched the shields flare with each impact. The station trembled, but held firm. The T-Zorn were relentless, launching wave after wave of fighters. They had the numbers, but Caleb knew they had something the Turant didn't. They had each other. The station's turrets opened fire, bright beams of energy cutting through the darkness, shredding Turant ships with precision. Caleb's pulse quickened as he pulled the trigger on his own weapon, targeting the enemy fighters as they darted across the sky. His movements were instinctive, automatic. There was no time to think. Through the chaos, he heard Rylana's voice in his earpiece, calm and controlled. "Focus, private. Keep your fire tight. We need to buy time." "Got it," he responded, locking on to a T-Zorn fighter that was closing in on their position. The blast sent the ship spiraling into the void, but there was no time to celebrate. Another one appeared almost immediately. The battle raged on, but Caleb felt the connection between him and Rylana solidify in the chaos. Every move they made, every decision seemed to mirror each other. They were fighting as one. And with every Zorn ship they destroyed, it felt less like a battle for survival and more like a battle for something more. Something they weren't willing to lose. Another missile barrage came their way, and Caleb ducked behind cover, taking a deep breath. He could feel Rylana next to him, ready to charge again. There was no fear in her eyes, only determination. And Caleb knew, in that moment, that they were stronger together than they could ever be apart. "Let's finish this," he said. Rylana didn't hesitate. The next wave of fighters was incoming, but this time they were ready. The battle outside the station intensified. T-Zorn fighters continued to rain fire down on the station, their energy weapons lighting up the black expanse of space. Caleb's hands shook with adrenaline, but he was steady. He couldn't afford to make a mistake now. Not with Rylana beside him. Not with the entire station depending on them. The T-Zorn were relentless. Their ships were faster, more agile, and their firepower was overwhelming. The station's shields flickered under the pressure, glowing bright before dimming slightly with each hit. But Caleb and Rylana held their ground, working in perfect sync. Every shot they fired, every enemy ship they downed, brought them closer to winning. But every moment was a battle. Every breath was a question. Would they survive this? "I've got incoming." Caleb shouted into his earpiece, firing a few shots at the fighters closing in on their position. "They're coming in too fast. Hold your position." Rylana's voice rang out, calm and commanding. "We hold the line until reinforcements arrive. The fleet is on its way, but we need to buy more time." Caleb's eyes flicked over to her. She was in complete control, calm in the chaos. But he could see the strain in her expression. He knew that she wasn't just fighting to protect the station. She was fighting to protect everything she had worked for. Everything she had believed in. And that included him. The station's outer hull shuddered as another barrage hit. Rylana's eyes locked onto Caleb's. For a split second, there was no one else. Just them. The bond they shared was undeniable. And in that instant, Caleb understood what she had meant before. It wasn't just about physical attraction or proving who they were. It was about choosing each other in the middle of the storm. It was about trust. The next wave of T-Zorn ships appeared on the radar, more numerous than before. They were getting smarter, coordinating their attacks with precision. Caleb's pulse spiked. "There's too many of them. We won't be able to hold out for much longer." "We will," Rylana said, her voice unwavering. "We don't give up. Not while I have you by my side." Her words gave him the strength to keep going. He could feel it every shot he fired. Every ship he brought down was for her. For them, the weight of their bond was no longer just a concept. It was a force that fueled him, that made him push past the limits of what he thought was possible. Then, a new voice crackled through the comms. "Commander Rylana, Private Thorn, reinforcements are on their way. The fleet has arrived." Caleb looked at Rylana. "It's not over yet," he said. "We've got to hold just a little longer." She nodded. "We will. Together." The sky around them was filled with explosions as the T-Zorn pressed forward. But suddenly, a wave of bright light flared on the horizon. The fleet had arrived. The battle shifted. The tide had turned, but as the T-Zorn fleet retreated, something caught Caleb's Aja massive Dajor warship, far larger than any they had encountered, broke through the shadows. Its dark silhouette loomed over the station, its weapon systems charging. Caleb's heart dropped. "That's no regular ship. We need to take that down or they'll destroy everything." Rylana's face hardened. "We don't have the firepower to take it down, but we might have something else." She looked at him, her eyes serious. "I've made the choice. If we destroy that ship, we end this war. But it'll take everything we've got. I'll need your help. Are you ready to finish this?" Caleb didn't hesitate. "You know I'm ready." Together, they made their way to the station's control room. They worked in sync, overriding systems, recalibrating weapons, and using everything they had to prepare for one final, desperate attack. It wasn't just about fighting. Now it was about making a stand. It was about doing something that would change everything with its Zorn warship in range. Caleb and Rylana locked the station's remaining weapon systems onto the massive target. Caleb could feel the energy building, his heart pounding in his chest. "This is it," he said, his voice tense. "Fire!" Rylana shouted. A massive beam of energy shot out from the station's main cannons, striking the T-Zorn warship with a blinding flash. The ship shook violently, its shields crackling under the force. Caleb held his breath, watching the beam tear through the warship's hull. And then, with a deafening explosion, the T-Zorn warship was gone, shattered into pieces. Drifting into the void, Caleb's breath escaped in a rush. He looked at Rylana. The smile on her face was one of pure victory, but there was something more, something deeper. They had done it, together, and in that moment, Caleb knew that this wasn't just a battle, they had won. It was the beginning of something new. 4. Both of them. Rylana turned to him, her eyes soft but full of pride. "We did it." Together, he nodded, still in disbelief. "Yeah, we did." As the battle ended and the T-Zorn retreated, Caleb realized that he wasn't just part of a mission anymore. He was part of something greater. He was part of a future one that included Rylana, the woman who had shown him what it meant to truly fight for something worth believing in. The battle was over. Zhenthranine had survived. The T-Zorn fleet, broken and retreating, would no longer threaten the station or the people who lived there. Caleb stood at the command center, staring at the stars outside the observation window. The galaxy, vast and filled with possibilities, seemed quieter now. The hum of the station had softened, replaced by a sense of peace. For the first time in what felt like forever, Caleb could breathe freely. Behind him, Rylana approached, her footsteps soft against the cold floor. Her usual commanding presence was replaced with something more. Human, she was no longer just the commander of the station. She was someone who had fought beside him, someone who had changed his life in ways he couldn't fully express. "You were incredible," Caleb said quietly, turning to face her. Rylana smiled, a rare softness in her expression. "We were incredible, Caleb. We did this together. You didn't just fight for this station, you fought for me. And for something bigger than both of us." Caleb's heart tightened at her words. He had never considered himself a hero. He had always followed orders, kept his distance, and focused on surviving. But with Rylana by his side, he had fought for something worth more than just his life. "I didn't know what I was doing at first," he admitted. "I was just trying to survive, to get through it. But now I realize it wasn't just about that. It was about you, about us." Her eyes softened and she reached out, her hand brushing his gently. "I know. That's what makes this real. What we have, it's not just duty, it's something more. Something neither of us expected." The silence between them was comfortable, filled with understanding. The chaos of battle was behind them, and the station was finally at peace. But there was still so much left unsaid. Caleb felt it in the air, in the way Rylana's gaze lingered on him. "So, what now?" Caleb asked, his voice low. "The T-Zorn are gone, but we've changed everything. What happens to us?" Rylana stepped closer, her presence both soothing and overwhelming. "We choose Caleb. We've both fought for something here. But now, we decide what comes next." He nodded, understanding her words. Their bond was undeniable now. It wasn't just about fighting together. It was about the life they had shared, the trust they had built, the future they could build together. "I don't know where this will take us," Caleb said, his voice steady. "But I know I want to find out with you. I don't want to go back to being just a soldier. I want something more." Rylana smiled, the faintest glimmer of hope in her eyes. "And you will, Caleb. You already have." Their fingers intertwined. And for a long moment, they simply stood there, letting the silence speak for them. The future was uncertain, But in that moment, Caleb knew one thing for sure. He was no longer alone. They had both fought for something that mattered, something that transcended the mission, the war, and even the station. They had fought for each other. And together, they would face whatever came next. The stars outside the window seemed to shine brighter, as if acknowledging their unspoken promise. The galaxy was vast and filled with unknowns, but Caleb didn't feel afraid. Not anymore. Rylana turned to him, her voice soft and certain. "We've built something here, Caleb, and I know that whatever happens, we will continue to build it together." And in that moment, Caleb believed her. He believed in them. He believed in a future where they fought not just for survival, but for a life worth living.